In Indonesia, the harrowing race to reach survivors is on. More than 72 hours after the earthquakes and tsunamis that struck central Sulawesi, as the death toll climbs to 844 and is expected to go much higher, we're going to look at the challenges facing rescuers and survivors who've had to bury loved ones in mass graves. We're going to ask what lessons have been learned in the years that have followed the giant tsunami of 2004 that killed some 167,000 in Aceh alone. Now, you can't blame earthquakes for global warming, for instance. This was not humanity's fault. But it is fair to ask about preparedness in a nation with a fast-growing population, a lot of which lives in these exposed areas. What can be done, and what is simply, well, beyond our control. Today in the France 24 debate, we're looking at Indonesia's earthquake. Joining us, Ruli Sukarno of the Indonesian Embassy here in Paris. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
And we want to welcome as well Badawi Ruban, former director of the Unit for Natural Disasters at the UN scientific arm, UNESCO. Thank you for being with us. Joining us from Oxford in England, Richard Corbett, who is in charge of who is humanitarian lead for Oxfam. Explain to us what a humanitarian lead does.
Yeah, I'm found humanitarian leading in Great Britain, so I have the relationships with the various countries in which we work and try and join up our fundraising side, invest in the programs that we're operating, and generally keep people informed of what's going on the ground.
All right, and we'll be asking you, of course, what you're hearing from what's going on. It's very patchy getting through. We've been trying all day to reach people in central Sulawesi. It's been difficult. The France 24 debate on Facebook and Twitter, hashtag F24debate. Yeah, it's a death toll that is sure to climb, what with 1,700 houses collapsed, dozens reported trapped in the rubble of several hotels and a mall in Palu. And that's not counting nearby Donggala, right near the epicenter of the quake, where communication had been cut off. Solange Mougin has more.
Around the clock, rescue teams have been searching for survivors. 3 days after a fatal 7.5 earthquake and a deadly tsunami hit off Palu, Indonesia, there are moments of relief despite the devastation. In her 20s, Nurul had been buried in the rubble since Friday. Rescue teams managed to free and save her. Such happy endings are all the more astounding when faced with the extent of the damage and the rising death toll. A double-arched bridge turned into a pile of mangled metal, upturned cars, the crumbled dome of a mosque. Amidst such devastation, survivors search for their loved ones in open-air morgues. Hundreds of dead bodies baking in the sun. Adi was on the beach with his wife when the waves hit.
I was carried about 50 meters by the wave. I couldn't hold on to anything. I was hugging my wife, but when the wave came, I lost her. This morning I went back to the beach. I found my motorbike and my wife's wallet.
Indonesian officials said that once bodies have been identified, they'll be buried in mass graves. And time is of the essence, as authorities stave off disease, relocate survivors to makeshift camps, or to other islands by freight plane. They're also sending in heavy machinery to reach hard-hit areas that had become inaccessible. Donggala was one of those places. Normally just a half hour from Palu, rescue teams are just reaching it, with fears that the death toll there could be extensive. To speed up rescue efforts, Indonesia has confirmed it will seek international help.
It really is the feeling, Ruli Sukarno, of a race against time at this point.
That is correct. We've been handling this since the very get-go, and it's been a very difficult moment for Indonesia, of course. Our government has, however, done what it can, and it's still continuing to carry out rescue efforts and, of course, trying to restore the conditions there as soon as possible.
Richard Corbett, what have you been hearing?
We've been talking to some of our local partners who've been on the ground, but again, in terms of information coming through, it's fairly limited at this stage, purely because the communications links are difficult, both in terms of physical access and in terms of talking to people about what's going on. So we're seeing the media reports, we're seeing some of the images, and hearing about the kind of immediate needs that there are on the ground. And we're looking to work with those local partners to get things moving, and then we'll be bringing in other staff members to help and support them.
Yeah, it's right now we have news that the military airport is reopened, but it's tough going, especially with areas that are still cut off. What does that tell you, Richard?
Well, the trouble is that it's a kind of area where we're talking about islands, we're talking about road connections, very difficult. We're talking about needing to fly in. Access is very difficult. The Indonesian military clearly have capacity in terms of gaining access to certain areas, but the information they pick up, they will pass on, they will respond as much as they can. Counterparts in Indonesian local organisations, again, as they are able to gain access, they will help in that response effort. And the same goes for us in terms of that need for working out the logistics so that we can get in there, we can help provide water, sanitation, food, shelter, which kind of the immediate needs of those people that have been affected.
It was sort of a perfect storm. This happened after Friday prayers. It was it's sunset on a Friday, at a time when people are out in the streets and or active in the city center there. And we're hearing that this is a city we're talking about, Palu, where it's around a narrow bay, and that magnified the force of this tsunami, which hit right near the waterfront.
That's correct. That's correct. The epicenter of the earthquake was not far from the shore. That's number one. Number two, the focus of the earthquake underneath the earth, the hypocenter, was very shallow, only 10 kilometers. That makes the propagation of the earthquake waves, of the seismic waves, very rapid and very deadly. Add to that the hour, it was 18 hour, 6 p.m. local time, 6 p.m. and 2 minutes local time. Indeed, people were, some of them, occupied still in offices or in prayers or indoors. So it is a vulnerable situation. But the tsunami warning has operated. The warning of the occurrence of the tsunami was immediately triggered a couple of minutes after the occurrence of the earthquake, which is good. Now, the tsunami wave reached the coast, reached the population, and reached the houses 20 minutes after the earthquake occurrence. That is around 6:25 p.m. local time. And the warning, the alert of the tsunami was lifted 5 or 10 minutes afterwards. So far, things were normal, and the preparedness, if I may say so, was operating as we could see in countries like Indonesia, which are not maybe as prepared to earthquakes as Japan or United States. But clearly, Indonesia, since the 2004 big disaster, big earthquake and tsunami, Indonesia, over the past 14 years, did make significant progress in disaster preparedness and in earthquake preparedness in particular.
So, Rui Sukarno, could you just clear up for us here, because there's questions over whether or not the warnings did trigger. We've heard the German makers of the system, of these buoys that were offshore, saying that the buoys worked. What they said was lacking was, quote, the warning signal up to the last mile, as they call it. Because it was that short 20-minute span that we're talking about, and in those 20 minutes, the word didn't get out fast enough.
Well, I'm afraid I can't really explain to you the details of what happened in there, because, of course, I'm not qualified to talk to you about the technicalities. But I think you do need to realize that Palu itself is a 200,000 population city, and trying to mobilize within the 20 minutes trying to to give this awareness of the imminent danger, it could be quite difficult to do so. Because once again, this is a very this hasn't happened before in Palu, so of course I would say that this is a very rare occurrence. But then again, it's not that the people are not aware that this is going to happen, but it's more of that it's there, the warning is there, but maybe I'm not saying for everyone, it could be a false alarm.
Yeah, help us to understand, because there are some claims, we don't know which ones are corroborated and which ones are false. For instance, on the hashtag F24 debate, one viewer saying, what happened to the Asia-wide tsunami warning system put in place after 2004? Only bottom sensors still work. All buoys out of order in Indonesia as no budget was allocated for maintenance and fishermen destroyed others. Is that true?
That part we need to figure out, because now after all this is happening, everybody, including the government, are doing their best to figure out what's really happening in there. So as of now, we still haven't given you the. We still cannot provide you with whether this report is true or not.
Richard Corbett, we had eyewitness accounts of people when the earthquake strikes going to the beach, because obviously an open air space is where you want to go when there's an earthquake. But of course, that's a low-lying area, and that puts them in the path of the wave.
Yeah, well, since 2004, I think there has been a major development in terms of early warning systems and tsunami warnings. And in other areas, we have seen the warnings being successful and people moving away. So we haven't yet got that kind of information to hear that potentially people move towards the beaches. And until we have further information to verify that kind of situation occurring, I wouldn't like to comment on it. I've not heard that. People generally have been aware of the issues of connections between earthquakes and tsunamis in Indonesia, so that would be a surprising move.
Of course, one of the something that some seismologists have said in defense of the government is that this earthquake hit so close to the shoreline that it may not have triggered some of the sensors anyways, because those sensors are further out at sea.
Evaluations which are now carried out and which will be carried out to draw lessons and to have explanation will be ongoing. They are presently ongoing, but now, of course, the priority is for the search and rescue. But certainly time will come when we will need to draw lessons from the technical and scientific point of view of what happened. But again, let me please underline, the disaster and the losses are caused by two phenomena. The shaking which is provoked by the earthquake itself, and the drowning by the tsunami waves. These are two different. We do not know today, we will not know very soon, what is the number of casualties of deaths caused by the collapse of buildings and the debris which fall out on the people, and the number of people which died because of the tsunami waves. These are two different categories of death. But again, the housing, the quality of the housing, whether there was a tsunami or not, definitely is not an ideal quality of housing in this kind of region, because the island has, maybe sometime old houses, not very much strengthened. Maybe you have concrete houses which are not always controlled. So the variety of the structures is very much diversified. Again, here also we will have a picture of what sort of structure did withstand the ground shaking, what sort did not. One more aspect which apparently some reports are talking about. There has been apparently what we call liquefaction of the soil. It means that the soil, because of the strength of the magnitude and of the earthquake, 7.5 on the Richter scale, which is equivalent, let us not forget, if I may give a figure, it is equivalent to 200 atomic bomb similar to the Hiroshima bomb. 200. So this is a very strong earthquake. And structures and houses need to be well built and well conceived to withstand such an earthquake. Again, it was a shallow earthquake, 10 kilometers beneath the soil. So, and the preparedness of the population certainly is not ideal. There has been progress probably over the last 14 years, but maybe not enough. So you add all these factors together with the lack of immediate rescue because of lack of material, because of a chaotic situation. You see this even in industrialized countries. So the chaotic situation which we are now undergoing will remain probably for next hours, next days. This is the most critical now phase. It is this rescue and search phase which is the most critical phase indeed.
Let's talk about that search and rescue phase because it's crucial. The Indonesian authorities this Monday saying they are accepting outside assistance from 18 nations, including Australia, Thailand, China, as well as France and the European Union.
The Indonesian government will accept international assistance in line with our needs, meaning it is welcome from friendly countries that have offered humanitarian assistance in Sulawesi Tengah. We are not asking for international help, but we will accept offers from the international community.
What does that mean, that we're not asking for international help, but we will accept offers from the international community? What does he mean?
Well, first of all, we really do like to extend our appreciations to the international communities for extending their assistance, their offers of assistance to us. We do need to underline that what we have been doing so far is that even though we are capable of handling this by ourselves, I mean, the first responders, for instance, is carried out by, judging from and learning from the lessons of the tsunami prior to that, is that the first responders usually consist of those, the local teams. We're talking about the provincial, we're talking about the region. It starts from there before eventually it expands more until the central government intervenes in that. What we're saying is that yes, we can handle this by ourselves, but we're very thankful should the international community be able to offer us any assistance.
And we understand things like generators are much in need.
The things that we are obviously needing right now, for one thing, the priority, of course, is for sanitation. We're talking about hospitals. We're talking about generators and clean water. Those are the very urgent needs that we need at the moment. As of any other disasters, we do need to fulfill all these, and also shelters and that. And these are the things that we need to provide quick, of course, in addition to the search and rescues that need to be carried out.
All right, when we come back, we're going to elaborate further on this, on what's needed, and just how much the clock is ticking in that race to find survivors. Stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate. Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate. We're talking about the race to find survivors in Indonesia after Friday's earthquake. At least 844 killed so far, but that's all expected, sadly, to rise much further. Ruli Sukarno of the Indonesian Embassy in Paris is with us. Welcome back. Welcome back as well to Badari Ruban, former director of UNESCO's Disaster Prevention Unit. And joining us from Oxford is Richard Corbett, humanitarian lead for the charity Oxfam. Thank you for being back with us. Just before the break, we were talking about what was needed, and it really is, Richard Corbett, a race against time to find more survivors. Realistically, the quake happened last Friday. For how much longer can we hope to find survivors?
We can for several more days. I mean, it does depend on, if people are trapped. I think it's been a history of people surviving very long periods of time. But we also have to recognise that this isn't just about those that are still trapped. It's about the population who are left in the area without access to clean water, other sanitation facilities, and the risk of secondary issues. So what I mean by that is that in a lot of these situations, you have the initial incident, which, as in this case, unfortunately kills many people, but the danger is that leads to a breakdown in the systems, which then leads to a secondary kind of event where there's a danger of disease spreading and other health issues which can impact on those that have survived the initial trauma. So going forward, what we're really concerned about is making sure as quickly as possible that we can get support in, and we're looking at getting sanitation setups, but also especially water purification, so that we can get water to people as quickly as possible to try and prevent that second phase of what can happen in these situations.
Badari Ruban, the military airport is back up and running. What do you do if you're the Indonesian government at this point? How do you coordinate all this? Where do you put the priorities?
Well, definitely this is a very difficult question, especially in this very particular phase, as I said, the search and rescue phase. Clearly, if there will be a situation, and hopefully soon, whereby we have, and especially if the international assistance will be now delivered and will be coming, there will certainly be a need to a clear and close coordination and careful coordination. We have seen, unfortunately, cases in the past, in some past disasters, whereby sometimes uncoordinated efforts during the post-disaster phases, uncoordinated efforts may lead to harm rather than to lead to...
Yeah, everyone has Haiti in mind after that terrible earthquake.
I have Haiti in mind in 2010, when we had in the post-disaster, post-earthquake phase for several days and weeks, we had some disorganization and some chaotic interventions. So hopefully, within the next 10 days, we will reach a situation where efforts and aids which will be maybe pouring will get quickly coordinated in order to avoid this kind of situation. But clearly, as even the Prime Minister of Indonesia declared this morning, clearly there seemed to be still a lack of material, of heavy material to access to the remote areas, and he said that he is very much aware of this and that he is assuring to get this. So clearly there will be, and there is a need for maybe some heavy-duty material, if I may say so, to get access, to be able to go into the rubbles and to come to the rescue of the people.
Already 2,800 troops, 2,000 police brought in. I mention that because the Interior Minister, the Home Secretary, had to deny or debunk, I don't know how you would put it, a report saying he was telling people to go ahead and take basic necessities from shops and will reimburse the merchants later. That's false.
That is false. I have not heard any of things.
Right. And so what is the what do you say to people in areas like Donggala? What is it? Population nearly 300,000?
Around a bit more than that.
Who have to fend for themselves right now. What do you tell them?
Actually, they don't need to clearly this is a very chaotic situation. This is why one of the main issues that we need to handle is, of course, the security, and our government has been clearly attaching a lot of importance to that. But apart from that, I think I need to agree to Mr. Rubani on this about the priorities of such situations that we're having right now. The priorities of the Indonesian government at the moment concerning the situation on the ground is, first of all, search and rescue, as you mentioned, and also the evacuation for those, especially the wounded. And of course, we need to bury the bodies because, as you understand, it could lead to many diseases. And of course, there's a matter of restoring electricity, and there's a matter of providing fuel. These fuels are very, very important for fueling the generators, especially those generators will be lighting up the hospitals and all the hospital equipment. And then, of course, there's the logistical, the distribution of logistic for the survivors. We're talking about the health, sanitation, water, clean water, and of course there's always the issue of the communication, restoring communication access, of course.
All right, there was the point that we were talking about in part one of our discussion, which was, did the early warning system fail, or was it a case of the tremors happening just too close to the shoreline? We can perhaps call up that map here, which shows you there. You see Palu and Donggala, and you can see the epicenter, because there was two shocks. The parts of that map that are colored are those that got hit by tsunamis, and you see that all of this happened right next to the shoreline. So far, Richard Corbett, with what we've pieced together, and again, it is early days, and it's perhaps too hasty to draw big conclusions, but what are the lessons that we've learned from 2004, and have those lessons been heeded?
I mean, as you said, it's early days to find out whether the systems worked as they should have worked. I mean, the early warning systems have been put in place, but clearly there is that question of people need to understand the gravity of the situation, not see them as false alarms, and respond to those early warnings. And that is about the way that communities are engaged with the issues, and take on board the severity of when these warnings actually occur. But there is a question here about timing. The length of time between this earthquake and the tsunami hitting was seemingly very short. And in those situations, we have to recognise that it is a large population, and moving that large population is very difficult. So then you come into the broader preparation issues of strength of buildings, ability to withstand these situations. And in a country that's developing like Indonesia, you have a mix of infrastructure, some which will be able to stand that and some which won't. And we will continue, they will continue to develop and implement ways to improve that infrastructure to learn from these situations, which clearly are absolutely tragic when they do occur. But at this point, for us as an organisation and the local partners we're working with, it's about what we can do to support those that have been affected by this situation. And it is early days. It's a very difficult situation. You talked about communications. We have partners on the ground who have not been able to communicate with people on the island from their head offices because those links are down at the moment. So we're learning more every day, and I think we need to get much more information about what went wrong, or if it didn't go wrong, if it was purely a timing factor, what we can learn for that for the future.
Lots of reactions on the hashtag F24 debate. Here's one. Indonesia and close neighbors should prepare its people with knowledge and emergency preparedness for dealing with natural disaster. Who can stop this? No one. The only hope is to install tsunami warnings, provide safe evacuation place, and educate people to react in a safe manner. Indonesia and close neighbors should prepare its people, their people. Since 2004, what's changed?
Well, for one thing, we do have a more coordinated effort, at least amongst the government's institutions. As you probably noticed that, first of all, the first responders have been very quick to react. Now they are localized, and they have established some agencies that deal with natural disasters regionally. That's for one. And which really does try to prepare at least the regions itself. Now, keep in mind,
when you travel around the country, do you get the sense that people are aware? Don't stay in a low-lying area. They know all the basic things you're supposed to do in case of a tsunami.
Well, here's the thing. Keep in mind that Indonesia is a country of 17,000 islands, and we have different, varied types of potential natural disasters. I mean, we're not just talking about earthquakes and tsunamis. Each region has a potential of certain disasters, and that's what makes things a bit complicated. Some regions are prone to volcanoes. Some regions are prone to tsunamis like this. And what the government, at least what the government are trying to instill upon the people is at least try to prepare of what would happen should certain natural disasters happen in this region. Certain regions have, more inclination to tsunamis. Certain has earthquakes. Certain has to volcanoes. And these are the things that we are trying to prepare for our people.
If I may really underline the aspect of early warning system. definitely since 2004 with the establishment, and this was also done under the coordination of UNESCO and of its Intergovernmental Oceanography Commission, the setting up of tsunami warning system.
It was what, a German scientists who put together the...
Including the setting up of these tsunami warning system, not only in the Indian Ocean, but also in Pacific and in the Caribbean. So this tsunami warning system, since that time, have been tested. They have, in some instances, saved lives. So these are very important. But again, a tsunami warning system is composed of many elements. It's composed of technical equipment, technical devices, but it's also a chain of preparedness, of sensitizing and educating people how to behave after the warning, but also after the warning, how also to stay in shelters and wait for the relief. So this is many elements. Now, in some countries or in some cases, some of these elements may not work. We do not know what happened 3 days ago. We will still draw lessons from it. Maybe the time for the evacuation, which was only 20 minutes, maybe it did not afford to have people evacuate. Or maybe, as some reports indicate, or even an official of the Indonesian rescue agency, he declared that maybe some buoys, which are part of the tsunami warning system, did not operate. So we will need to see and evaluate what are the exact, what did work, what did not work. But I would really like to underline the importance and the value of the tsunami warning system, and also of the disaster preparedness measures and the education at the level of schools, at the level of critical infrastructure, the drills which are done every year. There are drills. Now, we are still far from a perfect situation.
But yet we had all those people on the beach.
That's right. Why? Why they did not care about the warning? Or why maybe they did not hear the warning? Because we have maybe plenty 300 or 400 kilometers of shore. I cannot tell you, we cannot tell today what worked and what did not work. We have to draw lessons in order to avoid going through some maybe unfortunate situation. And let us not forget now that there will be also aftershocks. And we have to be careful, because this earthquake, the main shock was 7.5 magnitude. Usually 7.5 magnitude could be followed by aftershocks, and we have to be very vigilant to that as well.
Richard Corbett, I want to ask you again, what are your people in the field telling you on this point?
Well, you know, at the moment, it's been very difficult to get information from the front line. The communications have been very difficult. So it's really about preparation and looking to move equipment, support in terms of water purification kits, etc., as quickly as possible to people at the front. So we're really focusing on preparing kit, people, and the ability to respond so that we can get there and support as soon as we can once the logistics are sorted through. And that's happening right now.
Indonesia's President Joko Widodo toured the area on Sunday, stating that the priority was first, and picks up on what you were saying, Richard Corbett, to get food, fuel, supplies in. He also appealed for calm when he spoke.
We advise that people remain in Palu and to continue their economic activities here to ensure a fast recovery to normality. We do still experience small aftershocks, but I hope people will remain cautious, remain in Palu, and resume their daily activities as soon as possible.
That call for people to stay in their area, stay locally, why does he make that call?
Well, probably because he do not want to provoke more chaos and more panic. And he would like to try, probably, I'm not his spokesman, but probably he is aware that the situation will be chaotic, is chaotic, and it may take some time and hours to get a stabilized phase.
How is information getting to local people right now? Over the radio?
I'm sorry?
how's information getting to people in those areas that are where there's no power right now?
Well, that's the thing. Radios are very helpful right now at the moment, which is why. But the thing is, Indonesia is very, very tech heavy, tech savvy. We have a lot of cell phones, and one of the most easiest that in order to gain communication to the people is really through the cell phones. And this is one of the which is why this is one of the priorities, to establish all these cellular operators to be able to operate, because this is the easiest, because we pretty much everybody in Indonesia has cell phones, and that is one of the ways to reach out to the general public. We're very social media heavy. And that's why one of the issues is, of course, trying to get as much information to these people through what we consider maybe a bit more accessible way of communicating to the people there.
Cell phones, but in this case, because again,
yes,
it was exceptional circumstances, a bullhorn might have been more effective.
Well, bullhorn. I wish that would be the case, but again, do remember how the size of the city itself. The size of a city itself, Palu, is really, I think, a few 100 kilometers square, and trying to reach out to them. There are, of course, other effective means in doing so. But again, we're still working on that, and right now we're trying to establish communications, especially to the survivors.
Now, we said at the outset, you can't blame this on global warming. This is a fate of nature, a tsunami, an earthquake. Nonetheless, the world's population is increasing. Sulawesi, I see that I was reading up, seeing that the population since the start of this decade, they've gained 1 million people. It's like there's 18 million people in Sulawesi, and so a lot of these people live in these low-lying areas. Are we at a point now where we have to, well, basically rethink completely urban planning, where people live, and whether people can live in these low-lying areas?
Well, I can't speak for that. That's a very loaded question. But what I do understand is that Indonesia's population is steadily growing, be it of course, by our natural population, and also migration between our people. The thing with right now, Indonesia's first, you need to remember how big Indonesia is. Indonesia, the flight path, for instance, from the extreme east to the extreme west is similar from Paris to Dubai, for instance. So it's a really big country. And right now, with the current government having the economic distribution pretty much spread out, now more and more people are moving out. And we are talking about lots of new people, including in Palu. I wouldn't say migrants, but people from other cities moving. So maybe the local knowledge would be a bit different from those who actually has been there for years.
And that changes fast.
It could be, yes.
You raise an important question, that is how to integrate, to make sure in the reconstruction phase, in the recovery phase, and in the future development of the areas, how we can integrate this factor, this dimension of preparing for the future. Because there will be earthquakes will continue to occur, tsunami will continue to occur, but add to that the effect of climate change with floodings, with storm surges, etc., etc. So we need to change this culture. We need to reconstruct better and in a different way. We have seen mistakes done in Haiti after the earthquake in reconstruction. We have even seen now in the French islands of Saint-Martin and Saint-Barthélemy, where President Macron now is on.
He went for a tour 1 year after Hurricane Irma.
There has been reports that some reconstruction is not drawing lessons from the pre-disaster and the pre-Irma hurricane. So this is very important.
Richard,
authorities should draw lessons from this. We should not do business as usual.
Richard Corbett, how do you get through to people who are building in areas like the so-called Ring of Fire, of which Indonesia is on?
I think that you have to recognise that these are communities that have often lived in these areas for many years and many generations. That's what they see as home. One of your earlier comments about, staying in your areas. I mean, actually, that's generally what people want to do. They don't want to be moved to what we might see logically as safer places, because where they are is home. And so it's about that balance of how you can allow people to stay in areas which they have lived in potentially for generations and have livelihoods from the sea, etc. Balanced against safety and how often these events actually occur. Having stronger buildings, etc., that may withstand them. But it's a very complicated picture, and I think we have to keep communities at the centre of that picture to really understand what their needs and wants are as part of that whole debate, because it is about livelihoods. It's about much more than just the location. It's everything that's connected to that location in how people live and exist.
So the way to do it, if they're going to stay put, is through better building codes, right?
That's one part of it, but and we have talked about also people understanding the dangers of the tsunami, so that when warnings are received, they move quickly. All these elements which can help to people to live more safely in environments which are potentially dangerous. We have to recognise that these incidents, when they happen, they're tragic, but they don't happen that often. Relative to it being somebody's home, and that's their community, and that's where they come from. So yes, it's about how we can build stronger buildings that can cope, but also help educate people about what the risks are, so they can make informed decisions about whether they stay or whether they move to a new environment.
These things don't happen that often. However, Ruli Sukarno, and we want to pay tribute to the resiliency of Indonesians, because it's been a difficult couple of months, what with the earthquake that happened in Lombok, yes, and now this. What's the mindset for people in Indonesia right now? Not just in Sulawesi, but all over the country.
Well, I think Indonesia has always been a nation that is prepared, pretty much, in terms of they are mentally prepared, knowing that they do live in the ring of fire. And as Richard mentioned, these places are our homes, and we have to make the best of it. So right now at the moment, one area is very much affected by this. We have the other areas in Indonesia also not just paying tribute, but doing all it can to assist in their brothers and sisters who live there. And I think it's not just a matter of resiliency of the people living there, but it also speaks volumes of especially the other Indonesian who are willing to give and who are willing to assist their brothers and sisters who are in dire need of help.
All right, we'll leave it there. And our thoughts and our support go out to the people who are working against the clock again to help those survivors and perhaps find more under the rubble. I want to thank you so much, Ruli Sukarno. I want to thank as well Badawi Ruban and Richard Corbett of Oxfam for joining us from Oxford. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.